I'm trying to bring in private healthcare navigation as an offering. You know, like a family office will have, sometimes they'll offer some medical, private healthcare navigation people that
Right.
like will be at your disposal as a client of the firm.
Oh, I see. This artificial DNA company was going to use our patented cells to as a tumor delivery mechanism. Because the menstrual stem cell, we discovered the menstrual stem cell in 2006, and those cells home very well to inflamed tissue. So they're released from the bone marrow, and think about it. Every month when a woman menstruates, you've created an environment that can grow a fertilized egg into a 7-pound, 8-pound baby, right?
Right. So how much?
And so there has to be structure there, and that structure is provided by the MSCs that come from the bone marrow. So they've cycled out of the bone marrow, gone to the placenta every month, and then if there's no pregnancy, then it's washed out, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's released.
Mm-hmm.
And so in menstrual blood, you have MSCs. And we discovered that in 2006.
That's
and
wild.
We filed all these patents on it. And our article was the first. It was the first in the literature, right? And so that article is cited thousands of times, right? So most articles are only cited. Like the average article is cited zero. The mode is 0 times, right? Mm-hmm. And the average article is read by 3.5 individuals. 3.5.
How does that make you feel knowing that you've written thousands?
Yeah, well, it's good. So our paper on autism, first paper on autism, has at last count has been downloaded. It's on it's open access, right? Journal of Translational Medicine. And it tells you, it tracks how many times it's been downloaded.
Mm-hmm.
It's the number, it changes year to year. But with COVID, there was another article that beat us, but it's like 85,000 times it's been downloaded. Wow. So that makes me feel pretty good.
That's great.
The average paper's read by 3.5 people, and that one's at least been downloaded by 85,000 people. So whenever there's a scientific discovery and you're working with it, you have to cite ground zero, right? So that's ground zero for that.
How much success have you had with kids like autism and some brain issues? Have you seen any?
With autism, things are really good, and with brain injury, with hypoxic events, it just really depends on how much damage there is.
Mm-hmm.
I think with autism, kind of the round numbers on autism, if we go back and we look, we did a prospective trial. If they got 4 treatments, like 30% of them, these were severe autistic, all from the tri-state area because they were recruited from NYU, right?
Oh, okay.
So they were all right-handed males from 6 to 12 years of age, and they were all severe. And roughly a third of them, 30% became non-autistic after 4 treatments.
4 treatments?
After 4 treatments.
And when you say treatment, you're talking about
treatment cycles, which is for autistic kids is 4 IVs.
4 IVs.
4 IVs in a week.
Did you do in 1 week? Okay.
So, and then a 30% went from severe to mild moderate, and 40% didn't move. But statistically, very significant improvements, but they didn't move down a level. Right. In diagnosis. So that's using childhood autism rating scale, which is done by either a neurologist or a psychiatrist.
Still profound.
I would love to find the answer. I'd love to have the time, the bandwidth to look at all the different things. Because, MSCs they can change your microbiome, and your microbiome can change your MSCs, if you can believe that. So their MSCs communicate with your immune system a lot.
Yep.
Right. One of the major things that they do. That's why they're so good for autoimmune disease, like rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, multiple sclerosis. The first 2 are very, very easily treatable with even a single dose a single treatment cycle of MSCs
Incredible.
are very treatable because they interact with the macrophages. The macrophages interact with the T cells. The T cells, you get an increase in the number of these, a certain kind of T cell that is kind of like a mothering cell. It calms everything down. It says, "Hey guys, what are you doing? Like you're producing so many, you're spitting out all this, you're clonally expanding and spitting out all this TNF alpha and these cytokines that are pro-inflammatory."
Right.
So they interact with the MSCs. The MSCs interact with the immune system tremendously, right? So super successful because of this interaction and I'll just go real quickly to the drugs that are used most of the time for rheumatoid arthritis are antibodies, and these antibodies are specific for something called tumor necrosis factor, which is kind of a general of the immune system. And as long as that's elevated, your joints are swollen and you have overall, fatigue and all these problems. And you get an infusion of those antibodies and it's like a miracle happened because that TNF alpha is taken out of the place, right? There are also drugs that are antibodies to something called interleukin-6.
Yeah, I've heard
and
of
that's
that.
another one, right? Another one of those things that create inflammation. Well, the cells, when you infuse them, they increase this other cell that tells the immune system behave itself. Like the immune system is misbehaving by these macrophages producing TNF alpha and IL-6. That's why you're sick, because your immune system's hopped up and we don't know why. But the one thing I do know is if you give MSCs, it increases this cell that says, "Hey, stop it," right? And that's the major mechanism of action of the cells when we're using it for autoimmune conditions.
Can I ask you a specific question?
Sure.
A lot of stem cell people that I talk to think that an IV infusion is never going to help somebody with a brain issue like Mia. But do you envision like a time where you'll create a more direct way of applying your golden cells right to a person's brain? Or do you believe they do make it?
That's why I'm working with a neurosurgeon right now, because we're talking about how we can do that.
Okay.
And
what's the theory? Like,
there's something called an Ommaya reservoir that you can actually implant, and then you can have multiple accesses directly to the brain. And
it's like a port for the brain?
What's
like
that?
Like a port? Like you would have a port?
It's literally just like a port
for the head?
right?
Yeah.
And it can be put underneath the scalp, underneath the scalp, right?
And now you have access.
And then you have access. It's like a portacath where you can have a portacath here or here, and it goes into one of the veins. But instead of going into one of the veins, it's going directly into the ventricles, which are the sort of the pools inside of the brain. And those can so that's very interesting, not just for brain disorders, but spinal cord injury, because your body's producing this your cerebral spinal fluid all the time, and it's produced it basically first goes into those ventricles, and then it's pumped, it's gently pumped down through,
so it might reach actually more of the body,
and it's going to pass through the cerebral spinal fluid it always is going down, right? So if you have a spinal cord injury, there's inflammation there, and they're like hooks on, Velcro is hooks and loops, right? So let's say the cells have the hoops and the inflammation has the hooks, right? So as the cells pass by, they're going to stay there and secrete their stuff to help with the spinal cord injury. So one of the big frustrations of spinal cord injury is getting the cells high enough. So there are two ways to do it. One's a catheter, an implantable catheter with a pump. And then the other way is an Ommaya reservoir that can go into the brain and just put it into the ventricle.
It's called an Ommaya?
Ommaya, which is spelled like Omayya or something like that. Ommaya.
This exists already.
It exists already. The pump exists, and we've already talked to them. We're talking to the manufacturers of both of those in the context of doing a clinical trial for the treatment of spinal cord injury. But it's also applicable directly for brain injury. I just read a paper last night read a patent application about doing this very thing using stromal vascular fraction for like from adipose tissue to get introduce those into the brain. And they had several examples of people getting better. I don't believe there's been a, double-blind placebo-controlled study of that.
Why would you look into adipose if you're not an adipose?
I'm looking at it.
You just looked at a paper that
I
talked
looked
about
at the paper. I looked at the patent. I used to work on this deal, this stemcellpatents.com, and we reviewed every patent. So I'm a patent addict,
Gotcha.
like stem cell patent addict. So everything that comes out, I read it.
Are required to look into it, or it's just you're just passionate and why not read another interesting?
Yeah, I learn a lot from patents.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff in patents that don't make it into journal articles, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of cool ideas come out of patent applications that aren't even necessarily part of the patent, but in the body of the patent, in the description, they talk about iterations of things they've done.
Yeah.
So one of the things I learned more from patents than the literature, there's a bias in literature towards positivity, right? But I think it's important to publish negative outcomes to say, hey, this didn't work. We tried it and it was an absolute zero.
There's a lot of value in that.
And so in patents, you find that, right? Oh, we ran into a dead end here. This didn't work. So then we went over here and that did work, right? So
if you like stories like this, please like, follow, and subscribe on all of our social media platforms.